Morning, my friends. Mike Hurst is with us, former U.S. Attorney. Good morning, sir. Special counsel report is in, and Mr. Hur, not making people happy there. A lot of different things going on. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Paul. How are you?
Just to ask you, how's the House thing in the House of Representatives?
Oh, man, I'm just trying to keep up with Madam Representative herself. So I've gotten really good at carrying the lipstick and the mascara and everything she needs. So
well,
she's doing a fantastic job.
As the first gentleman, I mean, that's your duty.
Absolutely. I couldn't be more proud of her.
Did she get a bill authored and dropped yet?
She has dropped a number with the Legislative Council. I think in the coming weeks you'll see some action on those.
Well, I got to get her on the air. We'll have to talk to her, and looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just where do we start on this one? When you start, it's a can of worms. But when you start, I have one story here. Let me do it this way.
Okay.
We'll together, all of us as a family, listen to this because we think, is it happening in the state of Mississippi as far as crime on the increase? Everywhere we look, we're not sure yet in Kansas City. You know, they call that Killing City now. It's a nickname they have up there. It's out of control. If you look at Oakland, California, this one blew me away. Oakland, California looks like a third world country of some of the things going on in America. Now, Pennsylvania, and I studied geography a little bit. Pennsylvania is nowhere near the border, not our southern border. But here's a story out of Pennsylvania.
Police are starting to notice a new trend. Recently, they have been busting groups that are stealing large quantities of merchandise, and they say the suspects are in the country illegally. The latest theft unfolded at this Ulta on February 1st. We've obtained video from inside the store that shows two men walk inside.
Two males come in.
Police say they helped steal $2,000 worth of merchandise. They were identified as Albert Turalba Jordan and Caviar Gilarte Campos, both from Venezuela, and police say both entered the U.S. illegally. West Whiteland Police Detective Scott Pizik has noticed a trend in recent months. He's identified at least 3 of these groups where the suspects crossed the border illegally.
Wow.
Even though the border is nearly 2,000 miles away, police say it's having an impact here. In June, this man was caught on surveillance at Kohl's in Exton. Police say he stole $17,000 worth of merchandise. The Peruvian national was arrested and deported in the fall, but he's already...
Let me finish that. He's already back in the United States of America.
Right. We saw this all the time when I was not only United States attorney, but before that as an assistant U.S. attorney. I read something the other day that in 2020, when Biden was elected, we had about 10 million illegal aliens in this country. In the 3 years during the Biden presidency, that has doubled, according to this article I read in the Hill newspaper. 10 million more in 3 years. It's a coordinated effort by the Democratic Party to get these individuals into this country, get them voting. Some cities have already authorized illegal aliens to vote. And so you see this.
And that's against the law as far as federal.
Yes, absolutely.
They've erased the line so much. I don't know how you can police that.
No. And just what we saw, with Mississippi being kind of a transient state for illegal immigrant migration, with our interstates and everything else. But we also see them coming here for the jobs, as we saw back in, I think it was 2018, we did the immigration raids. They are not bad people, but the problem that I said back then, and I say it anytime anyone asks, is we are a nation made up of immigrants. You and I, Paul, our people came here, but first and foremost, this country is a nation of laws. And if you don't have laws, you don't have a country.
Nobody needs to apologize for the fact that the original understanding of immigration was to make us stronger.
Absolutely.
If there's something that we can do to let you in through Ellis Isle or whatever it happens to be, it's the same thing for my grandparents, grandfathers and grandmothers.
Absolutely.
On both sides. Can you come here and contribute?
Right.
Can you come here? Do you have a job, first of all? Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a place to go? Can you come without being a burden on the United States of America? And can you assimilate into this country where you drop you have your traditions and everything else, but your flag is now the United States of America?
Right. And for the Biden administration and the Department of Homeland Security just to completely give up their roles and responsibilities to actually to violate their oath of office.
Yeah.
To uphold and defend the Constitution and to protect this country. I mean, I love seeing what Governor Abbott is doing in Texas.
Yep.
This is an invasion of Texas, and I love that Governor Reeves, Attorney General Fitch have all supported Texas, sending support over there. But Paul, there's no difference in what's going on in Texas and what would happen on our Gulf Coast. Our Gulf Coast is a border. If migrants started streaming through the Gulf Coast and the United States Border Patrol did nothing about it, do you think we as Mississippians should just sit back and allow that to happen? No. We're going to respond, and that's what Texas is doing, and I'm glad to see Mississippi supporting that.
I have a question about Medicaid expansion. If the feds dictated the next 4 years of Biden or Kamala Harris or Democrats or whatever it happens to be, to say if you're going to take federal dollars and have Medicaid expansions, illegals who are now citizens of the United States of America by executive action, whatever he happens to do, you have to include them.
Yeah, I think
what would happen? What would happen then? Because I mean, it depends on how many come in. You can't stop them. You don't have a quota or cap.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that's the plan. Get them here, assimilate them through federal benefits, and then hopefully the Democrats hopefully want to make them citizens.
Well, we've already done that, as I mentioned earlier, as far as health care, because they are under the health care plan as far as California is concerned. And the last I heard, I forget, what was it, $62 billion? And it's probably more now. They're in the red as far as California is concerned. I don't understand when you look at polls and you see how, Biden is trailing maybe about 2 points here, 2 points there in some different states. How can it be just 2 points?
Yeah.
How much can you take from this administration? What he has done is more than the coronavirus ever was, because this virus of illegals and crime are going to be with not only us, but our kids and our grandkids. Well, and it's not going to be easy to get out.
And you see this is actually beginning to, the light bulb, if there is a light bulb in Democrats' minds, they're beginning to go off, because you see the mayors of New York, the mayors of Chicago. Now, all of a sudden, they are seeing the effects of this open border policy that the Biden administration have. And they're saying, please stop, no more. And because it is a presidential election year, the Biden administration is now, all of a sudden now, woken up and allegedly trying to address issues dealing with immigration, dealing with the border, but it's too little too late. And the questions are your listeners need to ask themselves is, are we better off today? Just like Reagan asked in 1980, are we better off today as Americans than we were 4 years ago? And we've doubled to 20 million illegal aliens in this country. And the next question is, knowing what we know about this president, his failing mental capacity, it's so sad to see. But the next question is, if you reelect Biden president, are we going to be better in 4 years? And the answer is clearly, absolutely no.
With some of the things you hear from him, that we're better off now than we've ever been before, these people can state these. The House rejected an amendment yesterday that would have decreased the White House press secretary's salary to $1. Karine Jean-Pierre.
They're overpaying her there.
The administration, or rather the amendment was by Claudia Tenney. She's a Republican from New York. And it was defeated 257 by 165, with 54 Republicans joining all the Democrats in going against the move. In campaigning for the amendment, Tenney called Jean-Pierre a liar, and she quoted a whole lot of different things that she said was absolutely, positively a lie. But then again, I had this one and thought, $1 might have been too much.
Yeah. Does the White House have a position on this new D.C. bill that seeks to address public safety here in the nation's capital?
So as police chiefs will tell you across the country, we've seen actually a significant drop in crime.
All right, you got to hear this. We've seen a significant drop in crime. They were asking about the D.C. It's so bad in D.C., they want a new crime bill there, and they're asking for some help. They did this crime bill earlier, and the president shot it down. So they're back again, but the people in D.C. asking for help. And the question was, is he going to shoot this down again as far as the president's concerned? And you'll hear the response on that one and why she is, with $1, being overpaid if they did pass this law. Back with Mike Hurst and more coming up next.
So, as police chiefs will tell you across the country, we've seen actually a significant drop in crime last year in 2023. And so, obviously, the president's efforts to fund the police and measures to prevent crime are working. According to this 2023 FBI data, there has been significant, obviously, drop in crime, including one of the largest yearly declines in homicides ever. And so, look, if you even compare it to what we saw in the Trump's administration in their final year, we saw that in the U.S. and this country, that the largest increase in murders ever recorded. So the president took action. We're seeing a decrease in last year.
What do you say about that?
I don't even know where to begin, Paul.
I don't either. There ought to be something called malpractice of the freedom of speech.
Yeah, this isn't just spin. You're right. This is just just complete fabrication. You know, the Biden administration uses the 2020 COVID numbers to justify and trumpet everything they've done. You know, after COVID, all these jobs were lost, all the crime went up, and now since we've gotten close to normal, jobs have come back. Crime has gone down, and it's all because Biden was elected president. That's insane. That's absolutely insane.
He's lied about that, about just about everything. I was looking at some things as far as the numbers are concerned.
Well, I will tell you while you're looking for the numbers, what people in these traditionally Democratic cities are doing, just like in D.C., just like in Jackson, they are supporting the local law enforcement who want to clean up the crime. You have these groups like ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, that oppose that sue the state, saying stop the Capitol Police in Jackson, Mississippi. But I bet if you polled the residents of Jackson, Mississippi, black, white, they would overwhelmingly support increased law enforcement in the form of the Capitol Police. And I think, just like you saw when I was U.S. Attorney, when we put our resources in Jackson to fight violent crime, violent crime came down. This is not rocket surgery, as I tell my kids. This is just the facts. Just like the governor just recently announced a new public safety initiative in Jackson, working with all the law enforcement partners. That's going to bring crime down. When you send in cops, when they do their job, you are protecting citizens and you're helping victims.
The one thing there that you didn't have, and the Trump administration didn't have, if they wanted to come in and help one way or the other, was that Lumumba was at that gathering as part of it.
Yeah.
Chief Wade was there as part of it. And you've got to have that teamwork.
Absolutely.
If you're going to start fighting about territory and drawing lines and who gets what and elected versus appointed, you're not going to get anywhere.
That's right.
I'm not sure exactly why he came to the meeting there, but I'm probably because he announced that he's going to run again for the third term, and he understands. Yeah, he understands people are sick of it.
Absolutely, and he knows election is coming up for him. He knows people are sick of the crime. He knows that when he gets together with other law enforcement, it makes him look good. Now, it's going to be interesting to see actually what happens over the next weeks and months. I hope for Jackson's sake, I hope for our state's sake, that he allows Jackson Police Department to continue to work with the partners, because at the end of the day, they wanted to work with us. They did work with us, but the only cog that was not working was the mayor of Jackson.
Let me ask you this, because she said something on the KJP, said the president has allocated all this money to put more cops on here. I haven't seen that bill anywhere. Have you?
I have not.
Where cities are getting a lot more money to spend on cops and put more police on them. I haven't seen that. I haven't
either, and I may have just missed that, but that would be the exact opposite of what they've been doing the last 3 years. Isn't it funny, Paul, during an election year, how things change for this administration? For 3 years, they just flush our country down the toilet. And all of a sudden, when he's up for re-election, now he's, someone, again, has flipped the light switch and trying to do things right.
Well, I love the way they do their math. That's one of the reasons I think liberals put Common Core math in there so they could use it. But you had 500 police officers on any given police force. Because of attrition, retirement, and defunding, they are now at 200. But in the last year, they've gone up to 250, so now we have more police officers.
Right, yeah.
That's the way they work everything.
Absolutely. We've increased it by 25%.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And when people fall for that as uneducated electorate, you suffer.
Absolutely.
The federal government in 2023 overestimated the number of jobs in the U.S. economy by an average of 105,000 per month. This is an actual story, equating to a cumulative monthly difference of 1.3 million, according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Jobs that were never created, only on the teleprompter, not at the kitchen table. The cumulative number of jobs reported each month was 1,255,000 less than the actual report. The biggest revision was in March of this year, of last year, when it was revised down by a total of 266,000 jobs. What they do is they come in and say, well, we've created 234,000 jobs. Then all of a sudden, they'll come back and say, well, we have a correction. It's not 234. It was 205,000. And then, getting very little attention at all, the third correction brought it down to another 2,000.
Yeah.
So by the time you get through, it was way below what they initially reported, but the press doesn't cover that. Let me ask you this question.
And they wonder why we don't trust our government.
Or the media at 7% of trust factor there. Do we underestimate the power that George Soros has had in this election involvement in DAs across the country?
Absolutely, we do. Yeah, absolutely. We as Republicans are finally waking up to it. We're beginning to get in that space. I mean, you have to give the guy credit. He was smart in the sense of going into those local races involving district attorneys, electing liberal district attorneys that, frankly, are just doing exactly what the Biden administration is doing on border security. Absolutely nothing when it comes to violent crime. That's why you see what you saw in Pennsylvania. That's why you see what you see in California, in Oregon, states like that. Crime is running rampant because there are no consequences. And when there are no consequences, I think that's Soros's end game, is to destroy America by doing it at the ground level.
Yeah. When you're a 14-year-old kid and you're not scared of anything, you think you're bulletproof and you just have no future and you like what you're doing, you'd rather be out on the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning breaking a window and stealing what you can, a car if you can, and you're either taught how or you already know how. You got that car, but you don't know what to do with the car,
right,
other than ride around it. But that's a whole new thing that's really slimy behind this, where you have some people who do know, who are buying those vehicles and apparently recruiting these kids to go out there and do that.
We had verified instances of gang members recruiting kids in Jackson, Mississippi to do just that. They knew when we, as the feds, came in to prosecute, as a general matter, we don't prosecute anyone under 18 years of age. So they targeted these minors. And as you said, these minors go out and do these things. And sadly for these minors, a lot of them don't have the parental structure at home.
Yep.
They don't have that. A lot of them don't have that male father figure. And so we've got to start in the homes. I know we've been preaching that for years, but that's where it has to start. It has to start in the home.
How do you get the guns off the streets of these young people or old? Doesn't really matter. Just guns and people who've even committed an offense or two.
You
or
just
more.
enforce the dang law. You almost made me cuss there.
What does enforce look like? Because we're so sensitive to stop and frisk, but man, that's the best way to do it.
Right. I think if you just enforce the laws, like I think I mentioned to you last time, the last year I was United States Attorney in 2020, carjacking is a federal crime. We have a lot of carjacking, unfortunately, in our capital city here in Jackson. The first 6 months of 2020, Jackson Police Department was reporting 54 carjackings in the city. Not one of those carjackings were brought to our office to prosecute.
Wow.
You start prosecuting those cases, one, you get the criminal off the street, whereas in the local district attorney here in Jackson, when they are arrested, they're usually released almost immediately. So in the federal system, you get them off the street. And with carjacking, you're going to get a pretty significant sentence. And most of those individuals that are carjacking, Paul, it's repeat offenders. It's the same person over and over and over again. And they see there are no consequences being prosecuted locally. And so that was the hammer of bringing them to the feds. Some
good news is we do have some bills moving through Judiciary, I think House and Senate, that would, if you commit a crime with a gun or carjacking or something like that, with or without a gun, the penalties are going to be even stiffer. Here's a did you know that just I'll squeeze this in here.
The report from Reuters today found that every single living president is a descendant of slave owners, except for one. And it's not Barack Obama. Turns out Donald Trump is the one who didn't actually have ancestors that owned slaves. The report also confirmed that Elizabeth Warren is not a Native American, as if we needed any more proof. But her family did own slaves, too.
Is that precious?
Wow.
the only U.S. president who did not have ancestors who owned slaves is Donald Trump.
Wow.
CNBC will not be covering that story.
I don't think so.
Final thoughts, sir.
Oh, man, where to start? Things, I mean, I'm excited about our state, Paul. Things are looking up. I mean, the jobs that are being created, the policies that are being passed. I mean, you know, we get a lot of bad press here in Mississippi. And frankly, I mean, there's nowhere else I would rather raise my family. There's nowhere else I would rather live and work. The leaders that we have right now are doing an incredible job, and I'm just excited about the future.
Do you think, are we using cameras more than because to me it seems like in the high crime areas, and cameras are so cheap now. I mean, they're not that expensive, especially in the way we spend money as far as the government's concerned. But in high crime areas, don't they play a big part as far as the adjudication of the crime?
Yeah, you see cameras used in a number of areas. I don't know how prevalent it is here in Mississippi. You know, we had that kerfuffle a number of years ago when they tried to put up red light cameras and speeding cameras and things like that.
Yeah, but that was for traffic violations.
Well, but you got to look at the principle behind the policy. And we as Mississippians, we like our privacy. Now, that being said, if you do have a high crime area and the people want it, then I see no reason why you shouldn't do more of that. But for me, it all comes back to what do the people want. And if they want to give up a little of their privacy, which it's hard to really argue much that there's privacy in public spaces. I mean, that's the definition is public. But if that would help and the people want it, man, I'd say give it to them.
Yeah. Well, when Alexa knows your deepest, darkest secrets because she's been listening, there's not too much privacy.
That's left. Right. But again, that's the individual's prerogative. But you see a lot of businesses, and especially in downtown areas, agree with local law enforcement to install cameras all around the business areas. And I think that to your point, I think that absolutely deters crime.
Is there a way for us to stop this at the United States Supreme Court, or how do you do this as far as making sure this next election is not stolen? Because they've set the president already by saying if you dare say anything about an election that it was not up and up, then we're going to condemn you. We're going to indict you. We're going to ostracize you.
First of all, the election was not stolen. I know a lot of my friends would disagree with me, but we were directed by Attorney General Bill Barr to investigate that throughout the country as U.S. attorneys. And I can tell you, I know those individuals personally who did those investigations. They are men and women of high integrity. I do not doubt for a moment they did their jobs and they did not find enough fraud that would overturn the election. So this nonsense about there being elections.
So you think Biden actually got 81 million votes?
I think Biden won the presidency based upon the votes because we could not find enough fraud to overturn the election.
Even though when you start looking at some of
I'm not saying there wasn't fraud, Paul. I'm not saying there wasn't fraud. What I'm saying is there wasn't enough fraud to
In other
overturn
words,
the
they
election.
cheated. They were good cheaters.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah,
Is that what we're seeing?
I think there is fraud, and I think there was fraud, but there was not enough fraud to overturn the election.
Almost 100% of the Democrats look you in the eyes and tell you that not a single vote was stolen in 2020. In all fairness, almost 100% of those same Democrats will swear to you on a borrowed Bible that the 2017 election was stolen.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, if you look both, Hillary talks out, I know it's shocking. Hillary talks out of both sides of her mouth when she talks about the 2017 and the 2021. So,
well, I'll have to agree with you. They did. I think they did it in such a wonderful way. There was a federal court in Atlanta, Georgia on Friday of last week. J. Alex Halderman was able to, in federal court, before a judge, show the judge how to hack a Dominion voting tabulator. The judge was aghast by this. He did that in front of U.S. District Judge Amy Totenberg using only a pin to change the vote totals.
wow.
This is part of a long-running lawsuit by election integrity activists set as a bench trial. Plaintiffs seek to remove what they say are insecure voting machines in Georgia in favor of the secure paper ballots. And boy, they're fighting against those paper ballots.
Yeah.
They
You don't want evidence,
that.
do you, Paul?
No. Always a pleasure, sir, and you always do a great job. I thank you so very much.
Thank you for the